there is no defense for the perfect pass.
He's the best quarterback ever.
Aaron Rodgers is the greatest thrower of the football in the history of the NFL. Bar none.
Gets drafted. And I want you to take my audience, Jeff, to their first meeting.
Rodgers walks into the cafeteria, and Favre's the only one sitting there. He says, "Good morning, Grandpa," to Favre. And, you know, Rodgers just lacked something. That I think a lot of us lacked this at 22.
Sure.
Yeah, I definitely did.
Yeah.
I never felt threatened, although I knew that I would not be the starter at Green Bay. I knew
Putting that camera on. I got something on my mind.
Aaron Rodgers is a bad man.
From receiving no Division I offers and going to community college to becoming one of the NFL's greatest quarterbacks, this is the story of Aaron Rodgers and his rise to the top. Rodgers was born and raised inside Chico, California, and his story would begin at Pleasant Valley High School. From the beginning, his coaches knew he was special.
Aaron Rodgers is a winner. He's a great football player, a great kid. And I would say right now he's got to be the best quarterback that's ever come out of the North State. I'm going to tell you that right now.
He had the arm talent he possesses to this day, as well as the quick processing of the game helped him excel as a quarterback. And despite having these physical gifts, he was only 5'3" and wouldn't get the nod till his junior year and broke countless records. In one game, he even threw for 6 touchdowns, so needless to say, he's been torching countless defenses, not only named the Bears. And by the time he was ready for college, he sprouted up to 6 feet tall, yet no Division I schools liked him. And after countless camps, Illinois offered him the opportunity to be a preferred walk-on, but he declined and would head to community college. And the story of Aaron Rodgers would continue at Butte College. At Butte College, Rodgers did nothing but excel from the start. Rodgers was so impressive that he took the starting job from a veteran quarterback who had been there for years. And in his first year, passing for nearly 2,500 yards and 30 touchdowns, he led them to a NorCal championship, and he was just getting started. The head coach of Cal came to a game to recruit a tight end when Rodgers had stood out so much that the head coach had asked who he was and offered him a scholarship and wouldn't look back. Just 4 games into the next season, Rodgers was named the starter of the Golden Bears and led them to a 7-3 record. He had set multiple Cal records, including most 300-yard passing games at 5 games. But his junior season was his best yet and was lighting up the sports world, leading the Golden Bears to a 10-1 record and finished the season with, again, over 2,500 yards, 24 touchdowns, and only 8 interceptions. He opted to skip his senior season and head into the NFL draft. Prior to the 2005 NFL draft, there was a nonstop debate of who should be the first quarterback taken off the board. Was it going to be Alex Smith or Aaron Rodgers? It seemed like an easy pick for the Niners. You take the hometown kid who's always wanted to play for you. Wrong.
The first selection in the 2005 NFL draft, the San Francisco 49ers select Alex Smith, quarterback, Utah.
And that's when it got dark for Rodgers. He just kept waiting and waiting and waiting. And after every pick, Rodgers would just pop up on the TV and get more and more frustrated. And after 23 picks, he would hear his name finally get called.
With the 24th selection in the 2005 NFL draft, the Green Bay Packers select Aaron Rodgers, quarterback, California.
The Packers weren't in need of a quarterback anytime soon. They had future Hall of Famer Brett Favre at the helm, so Rodgers would have to go there and wait for his number to be called. But it wasn't long. After not having such a great season and going 4-12, a new coach was brought in, and he seemed to be leaning more towards Rodgers because him and Favre couldn't develop a relationship. Everyone thought Rodgers was up next. Favre retired before the 2007 season, and all things were pointing to him. That is, until Favre decided to come out of retirement for one last hurrah. And some people think that was just Favre's last jab at Rodgers after Favre already wasn't a fan of people thinking he needed to get Rodgers ready. But 2008, the Packers were all in on Rodgers. Although Favre did come out of retirement again, they traded him to the Jets and were focused on the future with Rodgers. And although it wasn't his best season going 6-10, it was clear on why the Packers were going with Rodgers. While still managing to pass for over 4,000 yards and almost 30 touchdowns, the future was looking bright. And by the 2009 season, it was clear to the football world that you could see he was one of the best quarterbacks in the league. From being able to dissect defenses to make incredible throws from insane angles, Rodgers and the Packers looked unstoppable. The Packers finished 11-5 that year and earned themselves a playoff berth. And although they did lose to the Cinderella storybook Cardinals that year, it was one of the greatest playoff games ever, losing in an overtime thriller 51-45. But the next season was just as thrilling and as intense. With just 2 games left and sitting at 8-6, the Packers knew they had to win out in order to clinch the 6th seed of the playoffs, and did just that, beating the Giants and Bears to sneak into the playoffs. And as everyone knows, once you're in the playoffs, anything can happen. As a wild card, they defeated the number 3 seed Eagles, the Falcons, and in the NFC Championship, a familiar team that Rodgers has owned, the Bears. After a rough start though, and not his best performance, the Packers held on to the victory and punched their ticket to Super Bowl 45 to face the Pittsburgh Steelers. Early in the game, the Packers jumped out to a quick 14-0 lead and were looking good. And although the Steelers kept fighting, Aaron was just too good and too much and couldn't be stopped. The Packers held on to the victory, and Rodgers was named the game's MVP after throwing for 3 touchdowns and over 300 yards. But the crazy part is Rodgers wasn't showing any signs of slowing down. In 2011, Rodgers had one of the greatest performances in a season any quarterback has put together. Every throw was like a throw out of Madden, and his arm talent only looked like it got better. He managed to pass for over 4,500 yards, 46 touchdowns, and 6 interceptions, and helped him win his first of 4 MVPs. And although he had a historic season and insane stat lines, he would lose to the eventual Super Bowl champions, the New York Giants, in the divisional round. Now, fast forward to 2013, Rodgers was looking on track to get his 2nd MVP in 3 years, but in a game versus the Bears, fractured his collarbone and would miss 8 weeks. And the Packers really felt it when they went 2-6 during that span of games. But in the season finale versus the Bears, and against all odds, Rodgers made his return and made sure everyone knew he was back with this throw with only 40 seconds left in the game.
Blitz. Rodgers gets out. Floats it.
The following season, after another remarkable Rodgers-esque season, in the 2015 championship game against the Seahawks, the number 1 defense in the NFL that year, they knew they would have their hands full with Rodgers. And even though they had recovered an onside kick and drove down the field to retake the lead late in the game, they knew they had left Rodgers too much time, and Rodgers did just what everybody expected, drove down the field and got them in position for the game-tying field goal. But this was before the new overtime rules, so his late game heroics didn't even matter because he didn't even see the ball in overtime. But winning his 2nd MVP in 4 years helped lighten the blow a little bit. And after another season of defeat in the playoffs, after not getting to touch the ball in OT despite his late game heroics against the Cardinals, people were starting to get worried because he wasn't looking himself early in 2016.
Passer rating, 25th. Completion percentage, dead last. Yards per attempt, dead last.
And was possibly starting to lose some of that Aaron Rodgers late game magic. But after a loss, Rodgers came out and said,
I think I run the table. I really do. I think the offense is starting to click a little bit more. We just got to put together a game where we're consistent from the first snap to the last.
And they did just that, battling off 6 straight wins to finish 10-6. And as you know, the story goes, another playoff game and another Aaron Rodgers Hail Mary. And with seconds remaining before halftime, Rodgers would drop back and launch up a prayer, only to be answered when Randall Cobb came down with the ball in the back of the end zone and helped the Packers to a rather easy win, beating the Giants 38-13 and set up an exciting matchup between the Cowboys in the divisional round. And just when everyone was questioning Rodgers' arm talent, he threw one of the most picture-perfect passes anyone had ever seen to Jared Cook.
Unbelievable pinpoint accuracy on 3rd and 20. Incredible. This guy, every week, every year.
Despite leading the Packers all the way to another conference championship, he couldn't get over the hump and would fall to the Atlanta Falcons and would mark the end of an era. Despite Rodgers continuing to put up amazing stat lines, Eventually, Father Time will catch up to all of us, and did that in the 28th season by plaguing Rodgers with another broken collarbone, as well as in the 2019 season, forcing Rodgers to play with a bashed up knee for most of the season. The Packers would then decide to move on from Mike McCarthy and hire Matt LaFleur. And just as Favre did with McCarthy, Rodgers and LaFleur weren't always on the best of terms. And again, just as Favre once did, the Packers drafted a quarterback in the 2020 NFL draft, and that didn't sit too well with Rodgers, and took his anger out on the league and would look like his old self and claim his 3rd league MVP. And just as seasons before, great regular seasons, but not able to put it all together in the postseason. And as his frustration was building more and more, he finally spoke out, and with a contract expiring, would choose not to play for the Packers again and demand a trade, leading to this past offseason to be traded to the New York Jets, and is now surrounded by some lethal weapons and a pretty good defense too. And only time will tell if the kid that once thought about quitting football can find his way back to glory.